Good night, Belizeans at home and abroad. This is the Belizean Affairs Show number 451. 451. Today being Friday, uh, we'll deal with some constitutional and legal matters as well as others. My name is Leonard Brackett. I will be your host and chairman for tonight. I don't see any of the other panelists in the background as of right now, and we're running a few minutes late, so I'll just endeavor to enter into the program itself. I'll bow my head for a few minutes and say a short prayer, after which I'll do a short biblical reading and we'll take on the program proper thereafter. I'll just bow my head. Divine loving Father, thou who art the creator of heaven and earth and all that in them are, thou who art our creator as well, into thy hands we commend ourselves, asking that thou would accept our humble expression of gratitude and thankfulness to you for having granted us the privilege of life and the opportunity to still be alive today among our family members, friends, and loved ones. The knowest our hearts, loving Father, the knowest our desires, even our most secret thoughts. We pray that as we present this program tonight, of the Belizean Affairs Show number 451, that whatever we present may accrue some positive public benefit to our people at home and abroad, as well as others. Please continue to bless our children, grandchildren, great grandchildren, and our other significant ones. We pray that they must also bless our country of Belize, its people and leadership, and that they would bless this country, its people and leadership, as well as the rest of humanity. Those people who are in harm's way, nourish their travails, all of the problems that they're undergoing, loving Father. We pray that they must be merciful unto them. For we ask these mercies in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you very much for allowing us to indulge in that part of our presentation. I'll take a short reading. I will go to some part of Matthew and do a short scripture reading. And I'll take my reading from, let's see, quickly here. I'll take the reading tonight from Matthew chapter 25, starting at verse 1. And it reads as follows: Then shall the kingdom of heaven be likened unto 10 virgins, which took their lamps and went forth to meet the bridegroom. And 5 of them were wise, and 5 were foolish. They that were foolish took their lamps and took no oil with them. But they who were wise took oil in their vessels with their lamps. I'll stop there for reading for tonight and just make a short commentary on that particular reading, which is to say, Jesus was actually quoting a parable about people who prepared themselves for the journey that they were undertaking, and others that did not adequately prepare themselves. They just took it for granted that things would work out. Sorry. I'm sorry for that. And as a result, the rest of the parable goes on to say that those who had light when the bridegroom was coming, sorry, they were able to shine their light, and the others that didn't have any light were basically in darkness. But tonight, I'm sorry, speaking earlier, and then like somebody speak went in the wrong, went into the esophagus instead of the, let's let me drink a little more. So that will help. And I'll proceed with the rest of the program. Uh, Tonight's program is going to be dealing, like I said, with the Constitution. I wrote on May 27th of 2022 an article. I think I presented this article a few times before, and I recall that on no occasion were we able to go through the whole thing because there was so much material for the night, in addition to the commentaries. So I'm going to take another stab at it tonight and hopefully go through the whole thing and make a complete presentation of it. On May 27th of 2022, I wrote saying, the following commentary or citations were made by Leonard Brackett for public benefit awareness, instigated by the Sea Smoke variety show program, to, from which I have been extended an invitation. And they had queried of me as a guest, being in San Francisco, and the host, Mr. G. Michael Reed, being in Belize, and the engineer, Mr. Clinton Young, was in New York. So, for all intents and purposes, the show is similar to what we do on this particular platform. That is that I'm in San Francisco most of the time. Sometimes I'm in Belize, or sometimes I'm, LA or other places, for example. And we still are able to broadcast our show. And then we have panelists that are, sometimes in Belize, or sometimes in the Los Angeles area. And we're still, by virtue of the platforms that we operate from, we're able to still connect up via the internet and present our shows. So tonight's show, number 451, is being presented to you as of right now without the other panelists yet in the background. This show is now coming to you from San Francisco in specifics. The title of this particular essay and citations that I had put together was Belize Constitution Act is supreme law of Belize, and its accepted citations were made by myself on the 27th of May of 2022 from Cap 4, Part 1, Section 2, Subsection 1, and Part 5, Section 36, Subsection 1, Subsection 2, and Subsection 3, as well as Section 37, Subsection 1, Subsection 2, 4, 6, and as well as Part 4, Section 30, and Section 32, 33, Subsection 2, and Section 34, Subsection 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 of the revised version of the Belize Constitution dated 2011. As of that time, uh, sovereign powers of ascension, executive authority, and governance accountability empowerment. By the way, you may notice that just now I read quite a bit of citations from the Constitution. That is to say, as much as I read quite a bit just now of the particular citations for this presentation, those citations were not exhaustive or exhausted. For example, there's quite a few more other citations that I could have listed as part of that uh, essay or um, commentary. But I choose to limit myself to those which I had already just read, and on some other occasion, we may read others that pertain to the same constitutional matter, because these are the kind of presentation and or kind of issues that lawyers go to court at the low court and battle over, go to the superior courts, uh, appellate courts, and they battle over them again, and they go to the final courts of ultimate jurisdiction and they battle over them, and they come back again, and still, regardless of what the final ruling of the highest possible court is, we still have a bunch of people who are scofflaws and who refuse to abide by the laws. In other words, to them, the law is of no use or of no significance so long as they can have their own way and do what they want. And as a matter of fact, some of these people are the very same people whom we have as our elected leaders who are supposed to abide by the Constitution, but they don't. But let me not do too much commentary right now. Just let me get into the specifics of this presentation, the way it is laid out, and let me just try and follow the sequence. Like I said, I would like to be able to finish it in one swoop tonight. And so I'll make commentaries here and there, but I'll try and limit myself in the interest of trying to complete the whole exercise. So here we go. In part one of the Constitution of Belize, at page number 16, the Constitution is supreme law. That's what it says. If we go to section 2 of the Constitution and we read subsection 1, it will read as follows. This Constitution is the supreme law of Belize, and if any other law is inconsistent with this Constitution, that other law shall, to the extent of its inconsistencies, be void. That is, that laws are permissible to be made, but they must be made within the bounds and the constraint and the aegis of the Constitution. That is to say, the Constitution must always and at all time remain as the supreme law of the land. The legislator can make other laws, but those laws must come within the bounds of the Constitution. Otherwise, they are to be deemed as null and void, as per section 2. In other words, those other laws, if they are not within the bounds of the Constitution, they were stillbirth. In other words, they have no legality, no lawfulness, no constitutional backing, and therefore they do not breed the bread of life, or what makes them lawful. That is to say, the Constitution. If anything is violative of the Constitution, it is unconstitutional, illegal, unlawful, and a bastardization of the Constitution to pretend otherwise, as is the case where some of our lawmakers, they go to the House, they make these onerous laws, they apply these laws on the book, hoping that nobody will challenge those laws, so that no court get to rule on those laws as being null and void, because it is only a court that makes that ultimate decision in regards to our legal system and our governance in our democratic system of governance. It is the Supreme Court and the appellate court and the final jurisdiction, the Caribbean Court of Justice, that rules finally on what is deemed to be settled law or stare decisis. That is that there's not a legal interpretation of the law above that of the final court of jurisdiction. So therefore, whatever the decision is made there is the basis on which the society is legally governed. And on the basis of those laws, the other two branches of government, because we know the judiciary is the one that the courts, is under, and the executive is the one that the prime minister and the other ministers are under. And then we have the legislative, which is the group in the parliament or the House of Representatives that put together these laws and make these laws, and they're supposed to make laws that are within the bounds of the Constitution. Too many times they have made laws that are not within the bounds of the Constitution, knowing so because we have told them so and other people have told them so. And they themselves have quite a few lawyers among them who should be able to advise them, provide proper advice to themselves as members of cabinet or the House of Representatives or wherever, to the point that they should not have to be making any law that is basically anti-constitutional. And then pretend that, well, because they made it, it has to be deemed as constitutional. That is not the way the process works. But I'll proceed again. Let me read here a little bit more. Under Part 5 of our Constitution of Belize, at page number 49 in the electronic version, it says the executive or executive authority. Section 36, which is under Part 5, at subsection 1 of Section 36, it reads as follows. The executive authority of Belize is vested in His Majesty Queen Elizabeth II or His Majesty King Charles or the heir of the United Kingdom and Commonwealth of Great Britain, because Belize is still a member of the Commonwealth, and the choice was made to be a member of the Commonwealth and to keep the head of state being the head of state for the Commonwealth. Under subsection 2 of that same Section 36 of the Constitution of Belize, it goes on to read further by saying, subject to the provisions of this Constitution, referring to the Constitution of Belize, the executive authority of Belize may be exercised, not shall be exercised or could be exercised. It says may is a conditional premise, right? May be exercised on behalf of the head of state, Her Majesty, by the Governor General, either directly or through officers subordinate to him or her as Governor General, or members of cabinet, ministries, etc. Under subsection 3 of that same Section 36, it goes on to say further, nothing in this section shall prevent the National Assembly from conferring functions on persons or authorities other than the Governor General. Why? Because the members of the House of Representatives, the members of Cabinet, Prime Minister and other ministers, and all other members of our system of government or governance are subordinate officers to the head of state, and by extension to the governor general, who is the person that actually they have to come to get ascensions for the powers of governance. So on that basis alone, as stipulated here in the Constitution, that's the chain of command for the exercise of the executive authority and powers of the country. The superior officers grant the uh, the lower officers the opportunity to function or perform certain function within the bounds of the law. And that operation or behavior or function that these ministers have to perform is based on the requirements of the Constitution, the way it is structured, or legal system, the way it's set up. So no minister can just go arbitrarily and capriciously on his own, then, in other words, and just do anything that is contrary to the Constitution, and it should be deemed or considered as being constitutional or correct or legal or lawful. Because it's not what comes out of the minister's head at any given day or given time that is the law of the land. We just read under Section 2. What is the law of the land? The supreme law of the land. Yes, under certain circumstances, these ministers are authorized some powers, and those powers they can exercise and use to create subordinate laws. But those subordinate laws must fall within the purview of the Constitution. They cannot be violative of the Constitution just because they are laws created by them. They can create SIs, they can modify or create acts of parliament, and it is the governor general who is supposed to decide whether or not she's going to assent to those laws or those rules or regulations or whatever, or procedures. And even then, when the governor general assent to some of these things, the fact that she doesn't have any independent legal support or lawyers in her office other than to rely on the good grace of the attorney general, who serves in cabinet at the pleasure of the prime minister, who then takes the prime minister's bidding for him to go and hoodwink the governor general into agreeing to assent to whatever they want to do. She should have the privilege or the opportunity accorded to her, if she's not a lawyer, which she's not in this case, to have somebody who is an independent legal man at her side, so that she can decide whether or not what is presented to her is legal, lawful, or even constitutional, for that matter of fact, before assenting to something that is contrary to law. As in the case where they are trying to have her sign off on an act of parliament, and that act of parliament authorizes the PCC commission to go ahead and make a recommendation to the House of Representatives to write up some bogus stuff there among themselves and declare by virtue of their voting on it that they don't have any need for a governor general or a head of state, and they are going to become their own head of state. First of all, they don't understand protocol, procedures, or practices, apparently. Well, or maybe they do understand and they just ignore them. It's probably one or the other. But at the end of the day, those things don't they don't add up. I'll proceed to read further as regards to Section 37 of the Constitution of Belize, which says as follows, under subsection 1. It says, there shall be a Prime Minister of Belize, who shall be appointed not by himself, as I just alluded to just now, which is what they're trying to do by going to the House and declaring themselves to be the head of state themselves, appoint themselves. But the current constitution, which we only have one at a time, says there shall be a prime minister of Belize who shall be appointed by the governor general. It's not the prime minister that appoints the governor general. It is the governor general that appoints the prime minister. And she can give that ascension and she can take it away. As in the case where if the House of Representatives, for whatever reason, at some point declare that they have a no confidence vote in the House against the prime minister, then for all intent and purpose, the prime minister is then done. Because the constitution then requires of the prime minister to, within 7 days of that vote of no confidence, either demit office or before that 7 days is up, goes to the governor general and asks for an ascension to have another election. Those situation has not happened in our country, so most people in Belize would not even know that those are the parameters or the circumstances that prevailed. Let me go on to say or read, as in subsection 2 of the same section 37, which reads as follows. It says, the governor general. Oh, I'm sorry. I missed out a very important word. Let me just start over. Under subsection 2 of section 37, it says, whenever the governor general has occasion to appoint a prime minister, that is to say, after a general election or in any other circumstance where the governor general has an occasion or reason to appoint a prime minister, he or she, as governor general, shall appoint a member of the House of Representatives who is the leader of the political party which commands the support of the members of that house. I would say the majority of the members of that house. Each house serves a term of 5 years in our democracy, and sometimes the prime minister can call the election early if he so wishes. And we have had a few early elections recently, so I think that is clearly understood by most Belizeans, both at home and abroad as well. As regards to section 37, under subsection 4, it goes on to say, please note, please take good pay good attention to this particular piece, because it's something that most people are not aware of and apparently still have the impression that the governor general is a figurehead. I think I made a presentation of a program like that not too long ago, clarifying those and pointing out the constitutionality of such I'll call it an obtuse concept. It's something that way out in left field, no? Like for people who play baseball or softball and who understand those kind of phrase. Anyhow, under section 37, subsection 4, it goes on to say, the governor general shall remove the prime minister from office. I stop there for emphasis and for mischief-making purposes or reasons. That is to say, to let it sink in that what I alluded previously as regards to some people having this obtuse or funny idea that the governor general is just a figurehead. I'll read that over again for emphasis, and like I said, just for mischief. Let me leave it at that. Subsection 4 under section 37 reads as follows again. The governor general shall remove the prime minister from office if A resolution of no confidence in the government is passed by the House of Representatives, and the Prime Minister does not step down within 7 days. Remember, I mentioned to you in my earlier comment, the Governor General is not a figurehead and they have the powers to remove the Prime Minister from office under this particular circumstance. You know, that would be plausible and constitutionally supported, as a matter of fact, because this is the Constitution that we're reading from here right now. So, under subsection 6 of section 37, it goes on to say further, in exercise of the powers conferred to him or her as Governor General by this section, the Governor General shall act in his or her own deliberate judgment. That is to say, the Governor General does not specifically has to abide by any input or recommendation made to him or her, and has the right and the vested powers and authority according to the Constitution to act in his or her own deliberate judgment rather than on the judgment of somebody else that provides them additional or extra information or input. So that there goes again another part to counter this funny idea that the Governor General is just a figurehead, right? No figurehead has that power or can exercise those kind of powers to dismiss the Prime Minister, even though the Prime Minister would like to inherit the powers of the Governor General and the head of state onto himself, as is stipulated in the recommendations that were made by the PCC. For them to attempt to do that is to commit sedition, which is tantamount to treason, because, and I would call it high treason at that, because that type of behavior, seditious behavior, at the highest level, at the Prime Minister and Minister's level, is high treason. I'll go on to read part 4 of the Constitution of Belize at page number 46 in the electronic version. It says, the Governor General and establishing the office of the Governor General. Under section 30 of the Constitution, it says, there shall be a Governor General of Belize, who shall be a citizen of Belize, appointed by Her Majesty or His Majesty, and shall hold office during Her Majesty or His Majesty's pleasure, and who shall be Her Majesty's or His Majesty's representative in Belize. At page number 47 of the same electronic version of the Constitution of Belize, it speaks about oath to be taken by Governor General. That is to say that before the Governor General enters into performing his or her function as Governor General, they must take an oath of allegiance and service. Let me go on to read section number 32, and it says, I don't see anyone in the background, so I'll just proceed. A person appointed to hold the office of Governor General shall, before entering in upon the duties of that office, shall take and ascribe the oath of allegiance and office. Under section 33 of the Constitution of Belize, subsection 2, it goes on to read further. The powers and authority of the Governor General shall not be abridged or altered or in any way affected by the appointment of a Deputy Governor General under this section, and subject to, goes on with a 3 dot to explain additional further issues, as well as finally saying the Governor General, acting in his or her own deliberate judgment, again, not as a figurehead, right? To be acting in your own deliberate judgment and to have the power and authority over the whole executive, of which you delegate some of those executive authorities or powers to subordinate officers, that doesn't make you a rubber stamp to any subordinate officers. Under Section 33 of the Constitution of Belize, it goes on to say, I think I just, yeah, I just read that just now. I'm sorry. Um, at page number 48, it goes on to say the exercise of Governor General's functions. And under Section 34, subsection 1, it reads, in the exercise of his or her functions, the Governor General shall act in accordance with the advice of the Cabinet or Minister acting under the general authority of the Cabinet, except in cases where he or she is required by this Constitution or any other law to act in accordance with the advice of and or after consultation with any person or authority other than the Cabinet, or in his or her own deliberate judgment as Governor General. So the Governor General may be appraised and or may be provided with input from various entities subordinate to her, such as the Cabinet, members of the Cabinet, and others within the functional part of the government or governance system. But none of them, as subordinate officers, can dictate and tell the Governor General at the end of the day what decisions to make or what should be her final disposition for any decision that is to be made. Why? Because, as it says here in the Constitution, in his or her own deliberate judgment, which is where they bring to finality any governance issues. Nevertheless, some people still believe, as I keep repeating, that the Governor General is just a figurehead and she is there to serve at the pleasure and the acquiescence of the Prime Minister and Cabinet. Unfortunately, people who espouse that type of nonsense is either because of ignorance, they don't know, and probably they don't know because they don't take the time necessary to read their own copy of the Constitution or acquire one and read it, even if they have to go to the library and borrow one. But at least they don't allow themselves to be knowledgeable about these facts, and they spew all kind of nonsense and want to entertain debates and discussions on these things based on their own personal ideologies or ideas or preference or wishes. Instead of reading the Constitution itself and have fidelity to it and be guided by it. But some of them don't even believe in the Constitution to start with. They don't want to be bothered with anything that the Constitution says, especially if it says that they're not allowed to violate it, or if what they're trying to do is violative of the Constitution. They could care less if there's a Constitution. They just want to do what they want to do. Uh, Enough for the commentary at this point in that regard. Let me just push forward a little bit more because, like I said, I'd like to be able to finish the whole of this before the night is over. And I got quite a bit more to go, and I still got another. We have a 90-minute show every time or every night, and as of right now, I've used up 39 minutes of it, 40 minutes of it. So I think I'm going on good pace right now for the amount of material that I still have left. So let me proceed. under did I pass it? Did I go too far? Okay, I think I did 34. Okay, let me just read. I kind of lost my last point in the reading. Why? Because I was commenting and moving around a little bit, and I kind of lost the last exact point where I was. So I'll just proceed then from uh, subsection 3 of the same previous section 34 that I was reading. And it says as follows: whereby this constitution, the governor general is required to perform any function. I think this is, I just finished reading it, but I'll just finish it. After consultation with any person or authority, he or she, as governor general, shall not be obliged to exercise that function in accordance with the advice of that person or authority. Subsection 4 goes on to say, whereby this constitution, the governor general is required to perform any function in accordance with the advice of, or after consultation with any person or authority. The question whether the governor general has so has so exercised that function shall not be inquired into by any court of law. I'm not too sure if just the first reading is enough for most people who have not opened their constitution and read and know and learn and understand these things necessarily understood what I implied there just now. So let me be redundant, take another stab at reading for a second time again that same portion under section 4, not part 4, whereby this constitution, or I think I should read it with a different emphasis, whereby this constitution, I think is the proper emphasis, the governor general is required to perform any function in accordance with the advice of, or after consultation with any person or authority. The question whether the governor general has so exercised that function shall not be inquired into by any court of law. That is, whatever her decision at that point shall not be inquired into by any court of law. In other words, as a subordinate officer, as the executive, as the holder of the executive powers of the country or authority, uh, she should stand on good ground. So in this case, Ms. Salam is a she. But there is a problem there because the current governor general has these authorities and powers, but I'm not too sure that she actually understands and know that she has these powers because she has never exercised those powers before. And it would appear to me that some people, even as mischievous as they are when they stipulate the idea that she's a figurehead, are basing those statements on the idea that, as I just alluded to, she has never used those powers, whether she is aware that she has those authorities or those powers vested in her office, or not. Because we have seen where the deputy governor general has gone into the governor general's office in her absence and signed an assent granting powers and authorities to the cabinet and the government on behalf of the members of the cabinet, of which that same person, as Deputy Governor General, is the Secretary to the cabinet. So that type of mischief making and misbehavior, I would call it, is tantamount to, a misrepresentation and a misabuse or an abuse of authority. Because yes, while the Deputy Governor General can act in the absence of the Governor General, the Deputy Governor General cannot act beyond the limits of what is being authorized to him to do in the absence of the Governor General. The Deputy Governor General have no powers to sack or get rid of the Governor General. And whenever somebody is going to attempt to do something like that or provide for that to happen in the absence of the Governor General and with the Secretary of Cabinet signature acting then in the capacity of Deputy Governor General, that's mischief making. That's hijacking the powers. That's misbehaving on behalf of Cabinet. So the Governor General currently is in a pickle. But I'll leave that alone for right now. We dealt with that a few times recently. I don't want to go into the detail of that. I still have quite a bit of material left on this particular presentation, and I'd like to proceed a little further with it. At page 49 in the electronic version of the Constitution of Belize, it goes on to say, the Governor General to be informed concerning matters of government / I would add another word here. I would say state. Okay. All matters of governance or government or matters of state are the purview of the Governor General, regardless of what subordinate officers have the distributed authority vested in them by the Governor General to exercise those powers within those particular department or government agencies. They all operate as subordinate officers to her. So if she wishes to query into any of their activities or any issue relating to the governance of the country, they're ultimately responsible for providing her with that information or report. It goes on further to say under Section 35 of the Constitution of Belize, the Prime Minister shall keep the Governor General fully informed concerning the general conduct of the government of Belize, and shall furnish the Governor General with such information as he or she may request with respect to any particular matter relating to the government of Belize. I wish for those who say that the Governor General is a rubber stamp, I wish for them to read these portions of the Constitution as I presented them tonight at their own leisure and timing until they can understand word for word what the Constitution is implying or intimating. And stop bastardizing or misleading or misguiding other people who believe some of these. In fact, some of them are lawyers, Some of the people propagating this kind of nonsense about the Governor General being a figurehead. They come propagating this nonsense as if they don't know better. And a lot of people listen to them with that kind of statement. And for whatever reason, take that kind of statement and run with it. And they keep propagating it too. Because they have learned it from learned people or presumed learned people. But those learned people may not necessarily have been ignorant. They have an agenda. There's a reason why they do certain things, even though they know better. I'll leave that alone for right now. I'm getting close to the ending of this particular presentation, and I'm just feeling good about it because I'm still on track with good enough time left. Uh, Nevertheless, I went on to say, as far as this particular um, uh, uh, commentary, because that's what it really was. It was a commentary. It wasn't just an essay. So as far as that particular commentary, I said at the end of it, I stamped it as being a public domain, public education information effort, and signed off on it. Nevertheless, I posted it in Facebook, and there was some comments here. One comment said by Miss Betty Day, eye opening. In other words, she seemed to have read the whole thing and had some sense of appreciation for really what was being said there. And to her, it was eye opening to her. Well, I'm glad somebody at least had benefited from that endeavor in terms of getting something presented to them that enlightened them or opened their eyes. I went on to say to Miss Betty Day, my dear esteemed learned patriot, venerable sister, and vanguard of Belize, many people are not aware of Belize Constitution prescriptions and are propagating inaccuracies, falsehood, or as we'd call it back home in Belize, Yeriso, as we would call it in our country of Belize. I went on to say to her lastly, at the end of that statement, and then there are people who know better but choose to play the fool, to play ignorant for whatever reason. It's their prerogative, by the way. But unfortunately, they mislead a lot of people who don't know better and they keep propagating these falsehoods. There was another gentleman by the name of Mr. George Marvitt, another friend of mine, who provided an additional comment, and he said, I may have missed it, but I was hoping to see a section on the mechanism of on the mechanism or process of amending or enacting a new constitution. That was not what the essay was about or the commentary was about. But I think he made that comment in a way of trying to chide me because we had had some previous discussion on the Constitution and the merits of making changes, wholesale changes to the Constitution, as they were attempting to do in the PCC. And even before the PCC, when there was another, under a different name, the Constitution Reform Commission is a previous or original name that they had used when they wanted to start out that endeavor. And before they started out, I was speaking to people like the same gentleman here, Mr. George Marvitt, and others, trying to explain to them what is it that the government was attempting to do. Of course, I was preempting, and I was being the same like I always am. That is jumping ahead of the game and pointing out where the band is heading for before the band gets together and start their music and start the parade. I have a habit of jumping ahead and always, But anyway, let me stop being a little quiet. Um, so my good friend, Mr. George Marvitt, is intimating that in all the material that I presented above in this particular instance, I did not point out to him or to his colleague how to go about doing or successfully achieving what they were hoping to achieve. When in fact he knows that I have no interest in collaborating with them or helping them to bastardize our present constitution or to eviscerate it. I will have no part of that type of undertaking. And because I dared to tell them ahead of time what they were being recruited to do, and they eventually found out that what I was saying became the black and white that was produced as a report after the completion of their mission, even though their mission was not fully um, accomplished or done. It wasn't, they didn't educate the people as they were supposed to have done. But yet they came up with a report stipulating that, well, that report should be good enough because they consulted some people. When the Constitution speaks about consulting the people, it speaks about a referendum which must be had or must be done if the government is hoping to make those kind of wholesale changes to our Constitution, especially as regards to derogating or basic civil rights and human rights and natural rights. The government has no such powers vested in it. They have to come to the people with a plebiscite so the people can say yes or no as regards to whatever is it that they're proposing to do. And they must spell it out so the people can learn, see, hear, and understand, or learn what is it that they're attempting to do. It's mandated. A referendum is mandated. But these jackals, even in the document that they wrote for the PCC Act, stipulated that if in case the recommendations that would come back to them from the PCC Commission did not give them enough meat or input or information, then they would just go ahead and pass into legislation whatever they wanted to pass into legislation because they are currently entitled to do that anyhow. Hello? So if you are currently entitled and empowered by the Constitution to make amendments and changes, of course, within the bounds of the Constitution, is the principle. But they don't want to abide by that principle. They want to make changes outside the bounds of the Constitution to eviscerate major portions of the Constitution in order for them to be able to so-called hijack the powers of governance unto themselves, get rid of the Governor General and the head of state, and usurp those powers vested in those two entities unto themselves. That's what the recommendations were. But like I always say, I told them so. I told them that's what they were after. And I was being flagged for telling them ahead of time what the assignment was. Only to find out that after the fact, they themselves start complaining and say, well, what was presented wasn't what they had actually agreed upon or wanted to have presented. Inclusive, some of their own input was being, scratched out or eliminated from the presentation. So they had about 10 or 11 of the commissioners then from that group was totally against the end product. And they were just dismissed. Their concerns was just dismissed. Just as the concerns of many other Belizeans who were not members of the commission themselves. As a matter of fact, when they were putting the commission together, some Creole people, black people in Belize, asked the Prime Minister for them to become part of or members of the commission. And the man looked straight in their face and tell them, Creole are a minority, so they don't need to be bothered. I mean, I'm laughing, right? Because it's so sad that a knucklehead person at that level of our society and our governance would even dare to think those thoughts, much less express them in public. I mean, it's ludicrous. I mean, it's so bad to the point that I rather laugh rather than cry for being ashamed and embarrassed that a person at that position in our system of governance would be so small-minded and so petty and puny to allow themselves to be caught up in the exercise of dismissing large portions of the population of the country, all because they are trying to change the present demography of the country to what is it that they're exercising policies of state that the Constitution tells them is contrary to the Constitution itself and is violative of the Constitution. Uh, Let me proceed. I don't want to abuse the time. I want to stay within the bounds of the time myself and see if I can close off tonight at an appropriate timing and still be able to complete or finish the whole exercise. And I'm getting very close to it. So, for my good friend, Mr. George Marvitt, he said, I may have missed it. In other words, he thought that he's trying to be funny, right? Because in my presentation, I did not address what he is claiming that he might have missed. So he didn't have to say he might have missed it. He could have said, well, you didn't deal with this. What about this? Can you deal with this as well? And that would have been good enough. Because I did not deal with what he's talking about as, you know, I did not go into any exercise to try and explain to him and his colleagues on the commission what I had already explained to some of them before. In this particular essay or um, commentary, I was dealing with some other matters. But he is peeved or he is vexed because I didn't touch the subject or insinuated on the subject the way he thought that it would have served his personal perspective. And that is to say, maybe to either agree with what they were doing or to disagree. He could not have been making this statement in the context of believing that I would have been agreeing, and therefore my statements or my commentary would have been in support of their activity, because he knows where I'm coming from when it came to their activities. I had verbalized that in no uncertain terms. I did not hold back any words. Yes, I attempted to be kind of decent in my way of approaching and speaking to the matter, you know, so as not to be disrespectful or blackguarding, or end up saying things that I don't have to say because I have a command of the English language that is good enough for me not to have to debase myself to that level of cursing bad words and trying to, pretend that we're in using coarse words and bad words that will carry the day in terms of the facts or the information. The facts and the information should stand on their own. So I did. Anyhow, he went on to say as well, let me finish up what he said because I have a couple others that I may have missed it, he said, but I was hoping to see a section on the mechanism of, or process of amending or enacting a new constitution. I have no interest in having no new constitution amended or enacted in the country. The constitution we have right now is good enough. There are things that maybe you can add to it, but I don't think that it's so bad that you have to take nothing out of it or take away from it. Enhance it. Provide stronger language for people's rights to be upheld, rather than providing language, derogatory language, and debased language, and criminalizing people's constitutional rights. That's what the government should be doing. Doing what is good, not what is bad. And I'm not going to encourage them or try to provide them or guide them or give them more information as to how I think they ought to be able to do it. Out of here with that. Anyhow, I did a reply to my good friend by saying, Mr. George Marvitt, my dear esteemed learned patriot, venerable brother and vanguard of Belize. Because the gentleman is well spoken, he's good at what he does, but he's a hired gun for the wrong side of the show. Of course, I'm being a bit, I know I shouldn't be carrying on like this because the gentleman is not on the show tonight, or he's not around to answer or debate or express his own concerns, and I'm just taking cheap shot at the man. So I need to cease and desist that because it doesn't carry with the correct comportment for the show. But I did went on to say to in a follow up text of mine as a reply to Mr. George Marvitt's comments. I said, Mr. George Marvitt, my dear esteemed learned patriot, venerable brother, and vanguard of Belize, parts of the answer to your above question are written and expounded on in other articles by me elsewhere, such as Belize Constitution Reform Commission, which is when I lambasted them for in that particular article for what they were attempting to try and do and what they were being asked to go and do. And because we gave them such a hard run, the government decided they had to go to the House of Representatives, get the acquiescence of the House of Representatives, which they have a super majority, easily done, and then go and get them to pass an act. And then on the basis of that act of Congress, then they were able to go to the Governor General, get that signed off so they can get some money out of the consolidated fund to sponsor the same organization under a new name. And the new name became the People's Constitution Committee or Commission. No, the People's Constitution Committee or Commission. Parts of the I said to him, parts of the answers to your above question are written and expounded on in other articles by me elsewhere, such as the Belize Constitution Reform Commission. I think he had, I mentioned that to him to recall or have him do a recollection of his, the past experiences we have had. And I also said, open bracket, sent to you and showing received by him on October 19 at 8:58 p.m. in his messenger inbox. So I was able to go to the particular location where I had actually sent him the information that he was then alluding to me. Uh, yeah, I'm sorry about that just now. I had a screen stuff on, on the computer that was blocking some of what I was trying to broadcast. Anyhow, I was able to go and find the exact location in his inbox where I sent him the very information he was then asking me about, saying that, well, he was hoping that maybe in this particular um, essay or commentary that I would have been expounding something that I had already addressed before and sent him copies. So that's basically what this was about, my reply to him, in terms of the matter was already discussed and dealt with, and you have copies of it. So go take a little read, and then you wouldn't have to ask me, to have interrupted what I was trying to convey then to adjust something else because it's not fair. I can only adjust one thing at a time. I can't say all the sentences that I would like to say in one sentence alone. That's not the way. But anyhow, so I said, God bless always, sir. Well, he's my friend, so I had to make sure I wasn't being disingenuous or anyhow. I have another very good colleague of ours, another person who graces our platform often by the name of Mr. Gregory Morrison, and he made his own comment. He said, George Marvitt, the gentleman, he called the gentleman in. Did I get it too, sir? He was just, trying to chide, right? Of course, I replied to him as well. Mr. Gregory Morrison, my dear esteemed learned patriot, venerable brother, and vanguard of Belize and USA, I may have sent it to you as well, sir. So that's what I replied to him. Nevertheless, we had another very uh, knowledgeable uh, gentleman, Mr. Wellington Ramos, who also provided a commentary, a comment to my commentary. And he went on to say, my people, what the Constitution states is not the way our country is being governed since we became independent, which is correct, on September 21st of 1981. And that statement was right on target. He went on to say, most Belizeans see the Prime Minister as the most powerful person in your country, and then Governor General as a figurehead, as I alluded to earlier, by saying that some people believe that and they keep propagating that. And so he said that the governor, that most people in Belize see the prime minister as the head and the governor general as just a figurehead with no powers. But that is not necessarily true. And he went on to say, time to teach courses in Belize government and the Belize constitution in all of our schools. And I applaud him for saying that because he, as an educator himself, is making a good recommendation in that regard. Because if people in the country would know a little bit more about what the Constitution says, these jackal politicians that we have running around using, abusing, and taking advantage of the people and the country's assets or resources would think twice. But because they know that 98% of the people has no familiarity with the Constitution of the country, you know, they just take us all for a bunch of fools and they, ride roughshod over us. Uh, I still have another 12 minutes, so I'll read the last part of what my reply to our venerable friend, Mr. Wellington Ramos. I replied to him by saying, Mr. Wellington Ramos, my dear esteemed learned patriot, venerable brother, and vanguard of Belize, your keen observation is very much on point, sir. And I closed out that as the commentary, as well as uh, the com- further comments of some of the individuals, as well as my replies to their comments. Um, I would hope that somehow or another, with these constitutional reviews and discussions we've been having, or presentations that I've been making, that it will be considered to be more like teachable moments, whereby, especially those people who are not familiar with the Constitution, and even some of those who are familiar with it, because I'll go further and say that I've had some of these discussions with members of the bar, lawyers, junior counsels, as well as senior counsels. I've had some of these discussions with former attorney generals. I've had some of these same discussions with former prime ministers. And a lot of these people have some weird concept as to what they think that the Constitution is speaking to and or saying when we read it. And I think some of them, even the lawyers, for example, some of them, they don't do research to validate or verify or contextualize or put in context the Constitution in regards to how the judges have ruled on specific cases, as a matter of fact, which each and every one of those lawyers, either by themselves or through their research department, can have people get this information on settled laws for them to read, review, and understand, and maybe change their opinion or their ideas. But maybe they are not interested in changing their opinion and ideas. They just want the law to be the way they want it to be. And for that, they just have to change it. But if they're going to change it and make it, and the changes that they're making is null and void, it means that they have not changed it. But our legislators have an attitude or a behavior pattern of going to the House, write legislation or laws that are onerous, that are anti-constitutional, illegal, and unlawful, and they put them on the books. And people get hurt by these things, and sometimes the people that get hurt by these onerous laws don't have money to fight the government, to go to court and to have their day in court and to vindicate themselves. A lot of them go to jail on false premise or false or trumped up charges. Or some of these laws that they make, or some of these statutory instruments that they write, have wordings in there that are outrightly violative of the Constitution and the rights of the people. And now they're having judges who are coming to the country suborned by a contract and who try to obtain the good grace of the government by ruling favorably to the government instead of ruling according to how the law is and ruling constitutionally and hold fidelity to the Constitution and their legal practices. We have some of them outrightly sitting on the cases in the court and violating their judicial ethics. You have others who are dismissing and or treating case matters as if it was a piece of toilet paper, with no respect, no regards or consideration. And all they're doing is making our system of governance more onerous, to the point where the appellate courts and the Caribbean courts of justice have to sanction and or talk forcefully to our judicial commission about their under their misbehavior. Suppose the Caribbean Court of Justice would have just let that slide and let that type of misbehavior, go on. It would mean then that these people can subvert the whole system of justice in the country. And I've been saying over and over, long before today, that we have judges sitting on a judiciary system that's supposed to be sanctioned and taken away and not allowed to be judging any cases in our country, because they self-impeach, they lie on themselves and lie in public. Any judge that is self-impeached should not be judging any cases, at least not in Belize. They should be sent packing to go do that kind of garbage in some other places. The fact that our country is a small little country doesn't mean that all of us are a bunch of fools there. And if we let these people get away with that kind of behavior and it becomes ingrained in the system, then what else can we expect for the future? Anyhow, getting a little personal and doing a little ranting there. I think I have about 10 more minutes to go, so I'll just use that 10 minutes. I'll leave this particular item Mm, and this constitution. Okay. Okay, I think I have. Mm, okay. I need to. Oops. Just spare me a second, please. I'm trying to find something else here. Oh no, it's the same. Okay, so it's the same one. I'll just leave it alone. Um, we dealt with this subject matter before. I have 10 minutes to go, so I'll just banter around for another 10 minutes on this. Uh-oh. Okay. Please just give me a second. Let me find what I'm trying to find here. I need to find this stuff quickly. Time is going. Okay. No, I'll have to leave this. This is too much for 10 minutes, especially with additional commentary. Um, yeah, I'm sorry. I was looking for something else just now, and I found not what I was looking for, but something that was good, but it's good, but I can't present it in the length of time that I have available. So I have to leave it alone and move on. I got something else here that I was looking for, but I don't know how far. But I've been posting quite a bit of stuff recently, so hmm, okay. Well, I guess I'm gonna have to leave it. Okay, well, that's a lot too. Okay, um, I found something here that I might be able to supplement just for a few minutes that we have left. I got 8 minutes left, so I'm going to use that 8 minutes to add to this particular program another small commentary that I made on September 26th of 2021. And I'm going to have to rush this one, so please pardon me for wanting to be rushing because I know I might not have enough time to do all of it, but I would like to do as much of it as possible before my time run out, so at least people can get the gist of the commentary. I said on September 26th of 2021, the following commentary was made by Leonard Brackett as a foresight of previous upcoming attractions to Belize governance powers exercise. And I titled the commentary, The Constitution of Belize Bastardization, Challenging Pandora's Box. Like I said, I may not do a lot of commentary. I may just try to read through the whole material. And whatever commentary I do may just have to be short in the interest of trying to stay on time. I started off by saying, Belize at 40th year of independence, at the time when the article was written, as I said in 2021, right? 26th of September 2021, Belize had been just about 40 years of independence because we got our independence in 1981. So Belize at 40th year of independence, getting rid of anything British or parliamentary vestiges and British head of state, an ascension to exercise Belize's powers, basically is what the Prime Minister of Belize, Mr. John Briceño, has as a wet dream. That is, Constitution of Belize revamping and to do violence to our to do violence or ultravirus existing Constitution of Belize, which to me is a seditious agenda, abrogation of sworn oath, because he sworn to uphold the Constitution and to have fidelity to the people and country of Belize, to uphold the Constitution of Belize. I went on to say, Prime Minister of Belize, Honorable Mr. John Briceño, appears to be getting power drunk, announcing a constitutional reform commission, which is what I alluded to earlier when I made the previous presentation. The title of the organization before it became the PCC, it was Constitutional Reform Commission, CRC, to reform the Constitution of Belize into a more pliable document so as to aggregate the government of Belize some additional powers vested in the people of Belize and the Constitution of Belize. I went on to say, a harbinger of what's to come, that is, riddance of existing constitutional constraints on the government from the Constitution of Belize, as we currently know them to be based on the present Constitution, to possibly an autocratic or dictatorial ministerial fiat governance before his current term, which was before the current term is completed, which was 2020 to 2025. Of course, he did not achieve that objective because we stayed on his tail, pressured them, and we exposed them for what they were and what they were trying to do. But it had not gone away fully because it's somewhere in the background, and at some point in time, they're going to come back with their shenanigans to try and find a way to push it through, with or without fulfilling the mandate that is required of them to have a plebiscite. I went on to say, both major mass parties, being the UDP and the PUP, as government of Belize, have indulged in bastardization of the Constitution of Belize in various ways and for different reasons or objectives, and at different times, whilst attempting to govern by fiat dictatorially or autocratically, by overreaching and aggregating to themselves and exercising punitive powers with impunity at that, after Belize's independence from 20th of September 1981. Long live Belize and Belizeans at home and abroad. And that was the end of that. I have 2 more minutes to go. I'll add, with those 2 minutes, a couple of commentaries that were made by respondents. One gentleman, a very good friend of mine, I would say a brother of mine, blood, um, he said, truth to power, 3 words, was his reply to that presentation. And I replied to him by saying, Mr. William Smith, my dear esteemed learned patriot, venerable brother and vanguard of Belize and USA, silence is complicit, sir. God bless you and rest of family, always. Mr. Michael N. Lindo, our friend from the eastern part of the United States, replied, he said, my brother, you not only observed, but saw how one particular uh, party gained prominence. He went on to say, I wrote yesterday, and this article proved it. The politicians of Belize see the people as being irrelevant, and they are the owners of the country, with the powerful business folks and Lord Ashcroft. I am so very disappointed that in my winter years, nothing will change for the better. The people are too timid, beaten down to change anything. And I replied to Mr. Linder by saying, Mr. Michael N. Linder, my dear esteemed learned patriot, venerable brother, and vanguard of Belizean USA, I share your observations and disappointment in the present status of Belize. God bless you and family and Belize always, sir. Mr. Lorenzo Aldana went on to say, Michael N. Lindo, well, it is time now to form a new party with people who really will break away from that trend. Belize doesn't deserve rapist leaders for government. Mr. Parker Smith included. He said, thank you very much, Brother Leonard Brackett, for shedding much needed light on this particular national significance. On this matter of national significance, that's what he said. I misread. Belizeans must hold accountable all those who are culpable of either supporting or facilitating these nefarious actions against the citizens of Belize. And I went on to reply to Mr. Parker Smith. Mr. Parker Smith, perfectly stated, sir. God bless always. Mr. Lorenzo Bull went on to say himself, both major mass parties, political parties, have intentions of crippling more the poor people because they have nowhere to go and having no resources to stand up to these evil things. Politicians, they are now seeing Belizeans are standing to oppose and open their eyes. So now they're coming up with their criminal idea to book out more of the poor people. And in closing, I went on to say to Mr. Laurentia Bull, great observation and conclusion, sir. Mr. Laurentia replied back and said, Leonard Brackett, I love Belize and I call it my country. I like to see government working with the farmers, not only business people. And my last statement to him in reply was, Mr. Laurentia Bull, that is what good governance is supposed to be about, sir. And that's the end of our program for tonight. Thank you for those who had listened to what we had to offer while it was live. I know that there are those who would listen to our program later on when they reach home from their long commutes. And for those who will visit our page and listen to what we had to offer tonight, sometime tomorrow or over the weekend or anytime thereafter. It's on Facebook, it's also on YouTube, and quite a few other locations, as well as other international platforms. Thank you very much, Belize and Belizeans, for listening to tonight's program number 451 of the Belizean Affairs show series. And we hope that whatever we presented here tonight, that it may have accrued to some public benefit to those of you in Belize at home and those Belizeans abroad, as well as others. Thank you very much for your time spared, and God bless. Have a good night.